we know it's looking likely that it will become extinct if we don't take action to protect it. And that's the comparison they're trying to make. Tasmania is infamous for causing the extinction of the Thylacine, and do we really want that to be another extinction that Tasmania becomes famous for?
One for Mum, one for Dad, one for the country.
And there has never been a more exciting time to be an Australian.
Budgets are about choices, Fran, and you show what you value through the choices you make.
This is coal. Don't be afraid. Don't be scared. The Treasurer knows.
I want an economy that works for people, not the other way around.
We'll just end up being a third-rate economy, a banana republic.
Just follow the money.
G'day, and welcome to Follow the Money, the Australia Institute's podcast that explains big economic issues in plain English. I'm Ebony Bennett, Deputy Director at the Australia Institute, and when Tony Plibersek became the Federal Environment Minister, she pledged there would be no new extinctions on her watch. Today, we're going to talk about an endangered species that is facing the threat of extinction as soon as this summer. The Maugean skate, dubbed by scientists as the Thylacine of the sea, is a ray-like animal that lives in Tasmania's Macquarie Harbour, and it's at risk of extinction due in large part to the impacts of salmon farming. The Australia Institute has been working hard to protect the skate, and last week we saw two key decisions that could decide the fate of the skate.
Since the T-Rex roamed the earth, an ancient ray, the Maugean skate, has inhabited Australian waters.
In the last 5 years or so, we've seen almost a halving of the population.
They've been critically endangered, so basically one step away from extinction.
A number of state and federal agencies are busy at the moment asking what needs to be done to save the Maugean skate.
The federal government is inviting public input in its review of salmon farming in Macquarie Harbour.
We need to make sure that we're addressing the key pressures on the skate at the moment, and that means looking at what's happening with the salmon industry.
The review was triggered when the Australia Institute wrote to the government to appeal its decision over a decade ago to allow marine farming operations in Macquarie Harbour.
Asking the question, can that be done without any impact on the powerful salmon farming industry, which is increasingly important for local communities on the West Coast?
Now, the consultation you mentioned, that runs for 2 months, is a chance for everybody to have their say.
To take us through it, I'm joined by Eloise Carr, Director of the Australia Institute Tasmania. G'day, Eloise.
G'day, Ebony.
Firstly, can you tell us about the Maugean skate and why saving it is so urgent?
The Maugean skate is a unique brackish water skate. That means that it's the only skate in the world that lives in this world between freshwater and saltwater in this mixed environment. And it's only found in Macquarie Harbour, a third of which is World Heritage Area. And in fact, the skate itself is one of the values of the World Heritage Area. The skate's been around since the time of the dinosaurs, the Gondwana era, and yeah, it's a pretty interesting little critter.
Yeah, that's incredible. Around since the time of the dinosaurs. That's a long time to be around.
It sure is.
And so what has happened to the population of the skate in recent years?
Unfortunately, the population has almost halved since 2014, and that's what happened in May this year. Institute for Marine and Antarctic Studies scientists interrupted their usual monitoring program in order to tell the rest of us that urgent action is required in order to prevent this species from becoming extinct.
The population is growing older and their recruits aren't coming through to replace them.
Now there's a real risk that this could be the first shark or ray species that is a real risk of extinction in modern times.
And the urgency was due to the population halving in those recent years. So that's obviously a big risk to the population and to its survival. What is the Federal Environment Minister doing about this?
So the skate, because it's World Heritage and it's because it's endangered, it's looked after under our national environmental law, the Environment Protection and Biodiversity Conservation Act. So that brings in the federal government's responsibilities to protect the species. Back in 2012, there was a decision made that allowed the large-scale expansion of fish farming in Macquarie Harbour under our national environmental law. And when new information, new scientific evidence becomes available about impacts on a matter of national environmental significance, you can apply to have that decision reconsidered. And that's what the Australia Institute has done in June and July this year with our letters to Minister Plibersek requesting such a review of that decision.
The Australia Institute has written to Environment Minister Tanya Plibersek claiming she has a legal responsibility under the Environment Protection and Biodiversity Conservation Act to review a 2012 decision allowing an expansion of the salmon industry in Macquarie Harbour.
Yeah, so just walk me through that. You wrote to the Environment Minister basically seeking a review of this decision. What does that involve?
So in a couple of letters, we laid out all the scientific evidence that has been discovered since 2012, since that original decision was made. There's been a number of really key pieces of research that have found out much more information about the impacts of fish farming on Macquarie Harbour waters
than we knew back in 2012.
Yeah, that's right. Having said that, scientists did advise that this was likely to happen, but the government made the decision anyway to allow the expansion. Now we know for sure that salmon farming is the primary reason for the depletion of oxygen in Macquarie Harbour's waters.
We all know the history of Macquarie Harbour from a point of view of the dead zones, and we actually got oxygen levels in the benthic down to zero, and that was clearly as a consequence of overstocking, over-harvesting, and since then I have been winding the industry back. So let's start with the context that in 7 years I've reduced the industry's input, both nitrogen, carbon and utilisation by 50%. So the oxygen levels are low. The objective now is to actually rebuild them, to build them back to close to what they might have been historically.
So how do you do that?
So, Eloise, there's a lot more scientific evidence about the impact of salmon farming in Macquarie Harbour, and you've written to the Federal Environment Minister, but the department itself, or the Federal Environment Minister, also released their own conservation advice. What did that say?
It really confirms what we put together in our letters, and that is that all of this new science confirms that fish farming is the primary drawdown, the reason for the drawdown in oxygen in the harbour.
And the conservation advice also kind of talked about the urgency of doing something, didn't it?
It sure does. It very clearly identifies that before this summer, which has now begun, that the language it uses is either eliminate or significantly reduce the impacts of fish farming in Macquarie Harbour. So to be clear, there are other things going on, but the primary concern is fish farming in the harbour, and the conservation advice also says that the simplest and easiest way to address this is by removing fish biomass from the harbour.
And the Federal Environment Minister made an announcement last week related to those letters.
We need to make sure that we're addressing the key pressures on the skate at the moment, and that means looking at what's happening with the salmon industry in Macquarie Harbour. It means looking at water quality. It also, of course, means working with recreational fishers.
She's confirmed that the reconsideration is happening. So when we wrote the letters, that automatically triggers this part of the Environmental Protection and Biodiversity Conservation Act. And so on Thursday last week, she confirmed that review is now underway. She's announced a consultation period for from today actually until the 2nd of February next year, where people can get involved and have their say about what they think. They can have a look at the science. We've helpfully compiled a whole bunch of information. You can check it out on our website, and you don't have to be a scientist to be able to do this either. You can put it in your own words how you understand the situation to be.
And yeah, we do that because it is a public consultation. The department wants to hear from the public. So yeah, head on over to our website to check out some of those resources, including some of that latest scientific evidence we've been talking about. But Eloise, it's not just the federal government who has a role to play here. Obviously, the Tasmanian state government has a role. What has it been doing?
Yeah, both governments have responsibilities to protect the skate. The state government is responsible for issuing licences for fish farming in Tasmanian waters, in state waters. So there are two types of licences. One is issued by the Environmental Protection Agency. They have actually renewed the licences just last week, despite the overwhelming evidence, both scientific and legal, as to why they should not be renewing those licences. Now, we're still waiting to see whether the second type of licences are renewed. They're also due for renewal as of the end of November, and they're issued by the Department of Natural Resources and Environment. We're yet to see what they're going to do, but both types of licences are required for salmon farming to continue in Macquarie Harbour.
Have you ever presided over a species extinction in your time as the head of the Environment Protection Authority?
And I doubt whether I'm going to do it this time either.
How
Leo.
confident are you of that?
I'm confident in the decision-making that I've been making over the last 7 years that has reduced the biomass, reduced the stocking, reduced the impact and seen oxygen levels improve.
Have you ever presided over a species extinction in Tasmania?
I don't think anyone is going to answer that, Leon. I'm part of a legal system that involves...
And Eloise, I mean, that's disappointing that we've already seen renewal of some of those licences and still expecting the others may come through. Is there any possibility of reviewing those decisions?
Yeah, there sure is. We're waiting to see what will happen, but there is an opportunity for those decisions to be challenged.
I guess watch this space when it comes to that front. I did just want to ask again about the federal government review. So obviously that process has been triggered. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the original conservation advice talked about a potential for having a pause on salmon farming due to the risks that we might see to that species this summer. What are those risks? Why was there this idea of the pause, and will there be a pause as this review happens?
So the first thing that has to happen is Minister Plibersek has to decide whether or not she is going to change the original decision. She has to review that decision, but she can decide the original decision stands, or she can make an alternative decision. And if she does, it becomes what's called a controlled action. And then there's a series of different environmental assessments that she would have to go through in order to assess if and how salmon farming can be done sustainably in Macquarie Harbour. So it's at that point, after we go through this first initial review, that then the assessment process would potentially begin. And that's the point at which she may decide to pause operations in the harbour.
Okay, so what are the risks to the skate this summer? Why is this so urgent?
So elasmobranchs, which includes sharks and rays and skates, they're quite sensitive to low oxygen levels. The other thing is that warmer waters hold less oxygen. So we're looking at a hot summer this year. That's what all the predictions are saying. And so even a small increase in water temperature for the Maugean skate is really bad news. So it's really rare that a single decision can actually make the difference between saving a species and sending it towards extinction. But that's what we're looking at with this federal government decision. If the business as usual with salmon farming continues in Macquarie Harbour, we know we've got the scientific evidence that tells us this species is likely to become extinct, and it could be as soon as this summer.
And obviously everyone knows the Thylacine, which used to be or was last seen in Tasmania, is now extinct. I mean, that's the situation that we're trying to avoid here, right? We don't want this to be another Thylacine of the sea where another species that, as you said, has been around since the dinosaurs. We could do something to prevent its extinction and we didn't do it.
That's right. And the Tasmanian tiger, or the Thylacine, we hunted that to extinction. And, scientists at the time, they didn't intervene, or we didn't know that we should intervene. We didn't have the population data, whatever. That happened a long time ago now. But that's why scientists have dubbed this skate, the Maugean skate, the Thylacine of the sea, because we know it's looking likely that it will become extinct if we don't take action to protect it. And that's the comparison they're trying to make. Tasmania is infamous for causing the extinction of the thylacine, and do we really want that to be another extinction that Tasmania becomes famous for?
Talk of making changes to the lucrative salmon industry has got people in Strahan worried. And in Strahan, half of the children attending school has a parent that is employed by aquaculture.
We're obviously strong supporters of the salmon industry, and even for the West Coast, we've provided several $1 million worth of funding through the Australian government, either for captive breeding programs for the Maugean skate or for research to better understand the situation that it faces. Equally, we want to see the jobs and the economic benefit that all of Tasmania gets from the salmon industry.
And that's actually why, Lucy, the Greens opposed the industrial expansion of salmon farming in Macquarie Harbour in the first place, because there was no baseline data. We knew it was going to be a very difficult body of water to farm fish in. Indeed, the industry's had a lot of problems in Macquarie Harbour with mass fish mortalities caused by lack of oxygen or nitrogen upwellings. So I think there's been a number of fish health issues.
And what, at the end of the day, is really preventing this look at salmon farming in particular? How big of an industry is that in Tasmania?
So first of all, every job in a place like the west coast of Tassie, every job is important. But at the same time, over 99% of Tasmanians are not employed in the salmon industry. And we've done research recently that shows the foreign-owned multinational salmon companies don't even pay tax in Australia. So these profits are being exported overseas for a relatively small number of jobs. Restructuring industries to become more sustainable is something that governments do all the time, and that's the situation we're looking at. Difficult decisions need to be made.
And Eloise, you recently held the second Tasmanian Ocean Summit where this plight of the Maugean skate was touched upon, but also where it kind of linked to the broader, marine policies that are under review in Tasmania at the moment. Can you just give a quick update on what the opportunities are there?
Yeah, sure. It's the second time we've had a Tasmanian Ocean Summit, and in fact 12 months ago was when one of our participants drew our attention to the plight of the Maugean skate. He predicted that it could become extinct very soon. So it's really quite a good example of what's gone wrong in marine management more broadly in Tasmania. So we've got this siloed approach to looking at all the different uses in our coastal waters. And rather than doing it that way, what we actually need to do is bring all the different uses together and manage them in a coordinated and a linked up way where, if someone over here is trying to fix a problem and then someone over there is actually creating more of a problem, if we actually integrate the management and bring it together with a more holistic perspective, then we can actually work together to achieve the same objectives and solve common problems and shared problems in a more cohesive and coordinated way.
And presumably have healthy oceans and waters that everyone can enjoy.
That's right. I mean, we're an island state, Tasmania. Most Tasmanians have some connection to the sea in one way or another, whether it's walking along the beach or going fishing on the weekend. And we've got this once-in-a-generation opportunity right now where our main marine law is being reviewed for the first time in almost 30 years. So this is a real moment in time for Tassie. We can look at how marine management's being done elsewhere, and we can bring our policies and our management framework up to date in order to do it better and manage and look after the sea for future generations.
Thanks, Eloise. That's all we've got time for today. This episode was recorded on Monday the 4th of December, and things may have changed since recording. If you like today's episode, please rate and review us. It helps other people to find the show. And if you're out there wondering why it's so hard to make ends meet at the moment, don't forget to subscribe to our new podcast, Dollars and Cents, with Greg Jericho, Chief Economist at the Australia Institute and Centre for Future Work, and popular columnist of Grogonomics with Guardian Australia. Each week, Greg dives into the latest economic figures so you don't have to, and he'll explain what they tell us about the economy, how it impacts you and your wallet, and where things are headed. You can find all our latest research at australiainstitute.org.au, including our tips on how to make a submission to save the Maugean skate. You can find us on Twitter at the Oz Institute with an AUS. My handle is Ebony_Bennett with a NNT. Eloise Carr is at Genevera E. Our producer Jennifer Macy is at Jennifer Macy with additional editing by Emily Perkins. Our theme music is by Jonathan McFeet from Pulse and Thrum with additional music from Blue Dot Sessions. Thanks for listening.